Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I hope that this is sounding much, much better. Please do let me know, my regulars, if you are on. Let me know it's all going okay and sounding okay. Turned my extra little lamp on there. Oh, please be working okay. I'm going to press on and assume that it is. And yes, this is Feature Week, if you are new here, is simply a chance to explore a Shakespeare text together or a classical text. Indeed, I'm sure we will branch out away from the bard. Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Ernest. Mwah. Thank you for letting me know, and good to see you again. And yet this is purely a chance to explore and play. And full disclosure, I've not read this speech out loud today at all. I barely even looked at it, and we are going to work through it together. So even as a professional actor who's got quite a lot of experience with Shakespeare, sometimes I don't know the answers. No actor knows everything. No director knows everything. In fact, no human knows everything. So this is a learning process for both of us. And this is a chance to explore and play and just tuck into some rich words that William Shakespeare has created. So I'm not going to go into too much context here. I will assume you have some idea, but very briefly, in this scene, well, I will just explain the situation for Claudio. He's essentially, Claudio's a guy, and he's being made an example of by Duke Angelo, Angelo, who's stepped in to fill the role of Duke for a while. And yeah, Claudio's essentially had sex with his girlfriend out of wedlock, even though they're about to get married. He's got her pregnant before that has happened. And that's a big no-no of this time in this place. And Isabella is his sister. She has been given a choice by Angelo, who's kind of the villain of this story, really, although that is debatable. Angelo says, I will save your brother's life and not kill him, not put him to death, not make an example of him, if you sleep with me. For some reason, Angelo is really enamored with Isabella. She goes to plead for her brother's life and walks away, being asked to have sex with Angelo. He's a bit like, whoa, why am I tempted by this woman? It's crazy. And she's mortified. And in this scene, the real Duke has just simply helped Claudio come to terms with the fact that he's about to die. And then Isabella comes in and ruins all of that by saying, oh, well, he kind of offered you an out, but it's too horrible to speak of. Claudio, of course, then is asking, well, tell me, what do you mean? And she has essentially told him the situation. And Claudio is asking his sister to do this for him, to save his life. And it's a really interesting play, this one. And personally, when I was younger and read it at school, I hated Isabella. I didn't understand it. I was like, why wouldn't she do it? It's no big deal. And there's so much complication in this play. It's a wonderful problem play, I think, and it's a wonderful exploration of human nature and what we hold dear to us, and faith. There's so much to explore there. But anyway, we ain't got time for all of that. Let's get on with it. We are going from line, I can't remember which line it was now. My complete works is on my laptop. I'll use the online version I'm using here. It doesn't have the lines on it, helpfully. But about midway through the scene, perhaps, Isabella says, what says my brother? Claudio says, death is a fearful thing. And we're going to go from there, really. And Isabella says, and shamed life a hateful, and a shamed life a hateful one, I thought it says. Anyway, something like that. Claudio says, death is a fearful thing. And then she says, and shamed life a hateful. And Claudio says, this chunk, which we're going to look at. I'm pretty sure that is inaccurate. And this is the thing I always point out. Please check different variations of the text, especially these ones online. I don't know who types them up, but sometimes they are just actually wrong. And I'm pretty sure that is inaccurate, but I'm using my complete works at the moment to hold you up eyeline wise a little bit better. Just trying to see if I can find that elsewhere. But for now, we'll just go with the one I've got in front of me. Excellent. So I'm going to cut Isabella's line and go from Claudio, death is a fearful thing, and just read for you out loud, not astounding you with my incredible acting or anything. The next chunk and the little chunk before one of Isabella's most famous speeches. So Claudio says, death is a fearful thing. Aye, but to die and go we know not where, to lie in cold obstruction and to rot, this sensible warm motion to become a needed clod, and the delighted spirit to bathe in fiery floods, or to reside in thrilling region of thick-ribbed ice, to be imprisoned in the viewless winds and blown with restless violence round about the pendant world, or to be worse than worst of those that lawless and uncertain thought imagine howling, 'tis too horrible. The weariest and most loathed worldly life that age, ache, penury, and imprisonment can lay on nature is a paradise to what we fear of death. Sweet sister, let me live. What sin you do to save a brother's life, nature dispenses with the deed so far that it becomes a virtue. Oh, first thoughts. What do we think? What do we think of this one? He's essentially he's trying to use imagery and fear tactics, maybe scaremongering, to get Isabella to do this for him, to sacrifice her maidenhead, to lose her virginity, to have sex outside of everything she believes in to save his life. And the brilliant thing as well to remember is what I've said at the beginning of this scene. Claudio was kind of resigned to death. He was kind of like, okay, let's do it. There's no way I can get out of this. But then he has his journey in this scene alone is phenomenal. It's a gift of a part. So even if you're thinking, oh, I'd never want to play Claudio, I'll never play Claudio, this is a really good part to play. But yes, Ernest says, what a guilt trip. Exactly. And I think he is, to some extent, employing lots of different tactics to win the argument here and win his life, essentially. And Ernest says she's screwed either way, right? So she can't be a nun. She can't marry Lord if she's had sex. And the crime that Angelo is asking her to commit is the very crime that Claudio is being punished for and made an example of. So there's so much lovely contradiction and dramatic drama in this speech. Am I right? So yes, I also cut out the alas, alas. So Isabella has an alas, alas before Claudio says, sweet sister, let me live. And it's just a lovely little chunk of text and imagery that I wanted to tuck into today. What time are we on? Good. There we go. Lots of time. I need to get some lunch in me as well because it's been a long day so far. But great. So Claudio starts. Let's work through it now then. Death is a fearful thing. I think I said fearful thing. So you haven't done my vocal warm up today. Death is a fearful thing. There's lots of in that line alone. And the way it is actually written, which I've talked about before, Isabella's line comes straight after it to finish the sentence. So there's a little direction from Shakespeare that should be quite a succinct, clipped delivery of that line. Death is a fearful thing and a shamed life are hateful. So, I think that's something to bear in mind. And actually, now I've read it once. Let me just quickly grab my copy with my little post-it note that I popped in there for me. I just want to double check that because it's bothering me. And shamed life are hateful. No, that is right. That is right. For some reason, it's not sitting with me well. But that's what happens with Shakespeare, isn't it? It's an older language that we have to get our heads around and be really clear with and make it work. That's our job as actors, is to make it work, not fluff it up with affectation to make it work for us. We've got to make it work for the characters, and that's what they say. So do stick with it. Ernest says, it forces us to put a value on the temporal existence versus the everlasting. No good answers. Yeah, and this is really one of the main things in this play, one of the main themes, isn't it? And of the time, and I know to lots of people who do believe in God or whatever God they believe in, faith is a real part of who you are. And this is something I really have to imagine because I'm personally an atheist. I believe in the universe. I don't believe that there is one supreme being that has made us. And I don't believe that we will live everlasting either in heaven or in hell. But these people do. So you have got to buy into that and really genuinely put the value on the everlasting life or the one or the life what do we call it? The temporal existence that we have here, in this worldly life that we live. My view, one of the more underrated Shakespeare plays. Yeah, definitely. And I think people think it's really depressing, this play, unfortunately. But it's really I think it's fabulous. I love this play. And when I was studying it at school, I wasn't overly enamored with it, but I do think it is, yeah, one of the better ones for sure. And it says not top tier, but close. Marvelous. So let me get my other script up. So let's work through it then. Death is a fearful thing. So notice how I said that wrong when I first read it out with you. The sounds that you're having to make are difficult to make, especially in my accent. We don't really say properly. We tend to put an F sound in instead of a TH sound, but it forces you to slow down. And I really like that. Really pay attention. If there's a sound or a word or something difficult to say in Shakespeare's text, make sure you slow down and honor each vowel and each syllable and each sound in that word, because it will help you get the point across and feel what you're meant to feel. Death is a fearful thing. And it's a statement, simple thing. Death is a fearful thing. Most people are scared of death. And Isabella retorts to that and says, and shamed life are hateful. And what she's saying there, of course, is, and if I had sex out of wedlock and got pregnant, for example, I would live a shamed life. And this was a real thing for women. Never underestimate that. And again, we still see it in certain cultures in the world today. You know, women are stoned to death for speaking up out of turn, or you know, not behaving the way that their religion maybe thinks they should. Or not even a religion, but a spouse, a partner, domestic violence. Like, all of this stuff is relevant in what she's saying here. I would live a shamed life. Society would frown upon me. I would not get a job. I would not get a husband. I would live a very hard life of shame, right? Ugh, a hateful and shamed life are hateful. So again, we've got lots of lovely full sounds there. So work them. And then Claudio goes on to say, "I, but to die." He agrees, yes, but to die. He agrees, then contradicts, yes, but to die. He's trying to outweigh her argument. Dying is worse than living a shamed life. And that's what he is faced with, right? But to die and go we know not where. Come on. I mean, how cool is that? I, but to die and go we know not where. And go we know not where. It's beautifully written, beautifully poetic. And it says you should feel uncomfortable. That means it's working on you. Excellent, absolutely. But do true believers, which I am not, really fear death? And this is the other contradiction that this brings up. If it is the ultimate goal to live with your maker, why not embrace it sooner than later? I edited your comment there to make it rhyme and have a little bit more rhythm to it. Certainly if your death is noble. Exactly. So herein lies another conflict, which is something that I think Claudio touches on, or Claudio. Some people may call him Claudio. I think Claudio has a better ring to it personally. But exactly, it's contradictory to me. And personally as well, I like to believe that this is our heaven. This is our time to really embrace the positive and be at peace. You know, and I think Claudio is terrified right now. And he doesn't see things the way that Isabella sees things. He doesn't see everlasting life the way Isabella does. Or maybe even if he does, even if he does have faith, he's not ready to die yet. He doesn't want to die. So therein lies Ernest's, you know, comment and point to make. Well, surely he wouldn't mind dying if it's a noble death, because he did do something wrong. But if he dies for it, then surely heaven would see him as being a good thing. Maybe there's so much to tuck into, and Isabella goes into this. We're going back to Claudio's speech. I, but to die and go we know not where. He's trying to share the unknown element of death. Even though Isabella believes she does know, you go to heaven or hell or whatnot. That's the kind of given. he's saying he's talking about the other side of it, the hellish side of it, the actual literal dying side of it. And here he says to lie in cold obstruction and to rot. So he's talking literally here about the burial process, about being buried in the ground, to lie in cold obstruction, not just obstruction, cold obstruction. He's picking his words very carefully, and to rot. Lovely semicolon there in this edition. This sensible warm motion to become a kneaded clot. Remember in the sonnets, and indeed plenty of Shakespeare verse that we talk about, he's using one good image and one bad image to help relay the drama and his situation here. This sensible warm motion, so I take that as me, my sensible warm motion, my warm body of movement and energy to become a kneaded clod. Kneaded clod. Look at the D's sounds we've got there. Kneaded clod. Dum, dum, dum. Clod. It's a one syllable short word. He does it as well with cold, rot, clod. He's being clipped in his choice of words to describe death, which is interesting, isn't it? I think I saw a Rodney on board. Hello. So Rodney says she could have answered, well, we will all die. It is only a matter of when. She could have. But Shakespeare didn't give Isabella that word, but absolutely could have. And it says as well, would Isabella feel the same if her brother was asked to forfeit his virtue or something of similar value? All of these questions are valid and have to be explored, because surely she'd have thought of this and he'd have thought of this, and he'd have been like, well, would I do it for her? But he already has. This is a thing. In order to save her life. It's interesting, isn't it? I love it. This is I think my teacher called it a morality play. This is a real play where it tests your morals and what you stand for and believe in. And I love that. I love the feeling it gives me, that sense of questioning my own integrity. What would I do? How would I behave in that situation? Beautiful drama. Beautiful drama. So yes, this sensible warm motion to become a kneaded clod, semicolon, and the delighted spirit to bathe in fiery floods. So do you see he's done this good image, bad image, good image, bad image, and then he goes on to describe even more, or to reside in thrilling region of thick ribbed ice. In thrilling region of thick ribbed ice. I don't think I gave that ribbed the extra that it deserved there, but for 10 syllables, it would be ribbed ice in this version. So we'll go with that. In thrilling region of thick ribbed ice. Let's look up thrilling quickly. Because I think of thrilling as being exciting and a good thing, but I think he's not saying it here. Causing excitement and pleasure, exhilarating, stirring, thrill, cause someone to have sudden feeling of excitement and pleasure, experience a sudden feeling of excitement and pleasure, pass with a nervous tremor, quiver or throb, it says here. And actually, always look these things up. It does say from Middle English, the origin is from pierce or penetrate. So that's interesting. So there's definitely, I think, some sort of sexual connotation there. But what he's saying here, or to reside in thrilling region of thick ribbed ice. Interesting, isn't it? That image. What do we think that bit means? Fill me in, people. Let me know what you think. So yeah, sensible warm motion to become a kneaded clod, and the delighted spirit. Spirit is meant to be, obviously they're kind of like ghostly figures, but I think spirits as well, from a religious standpoint, are normally the Holy Spirit, the Trinity, whatnot. Again, I'm a bit blurry on all of that, but the delighted spirit, the goodness, the soul, to bathe in fiery floods, not just floods, but fiery floods, and not just sit in fiery floods, bathe in fiery floods. Look at the language. It's all spelling it out for you. Your spirit, your soul, to soak in fiery floods. And that's a nice contradiction of fire and water there as well. Floods tend to be water. And then, sorry, someone's at the door, I think. I don't know what's going on. Someone's at the door. And fiery, that to me immediately springs up hell. So we've got this image of a delighted spirit, so a free spirit, perhaps a heavenly spirit, and hell. Boom, boom. Good image, bad image, helping us paint the picture here to go from this good, warm, sensible spirit into this fiery, needed lump of cold clod. You see? Fascinating. Rodney says, or you remove the uncertainty of where you will go if you make me do this. You remove the uncertainty of where you will go if you make me do this. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? If you can watch this play on a first date and it dominates the post-play dinner conversation, then you found the right girl. I love that. I think that is hilarious. Have you got me what I think you've got me? My boyfriend's got me an Uber Eats. I've got a vegan burger waiting for me after I've done this. Thank you. What a legend. And also, if you can be looking at Measure for Measure on your lunch break and your partner gives you an Uber Eats McDonald's, then you found the right guy. Exactly. Hilarious. But yes, absolutely, Ennis, I agree with you there. And yes, I was hoping you would explain the thick-ribbed ice as that metaphor, or similarly eluded me. Bathed in fiery floods, I equated to the everlasting lake of fire of hell. Yes, the fire of hell. El cerebral moral vet on a first date. Oh, I've missed you guys. This is so good. Yeah, thick-ribbed ice. I must admit, it's an interesting one, and I kind of feel, thick-ribbed. Let's look up ribbed. Let's go for that. I'm picturing, like you get stalagmites and stalactites, but like icicles. I'm picturing that. I'm picturing the sharpness of this thick-ribbed ice with the heat of the fire. I'm picturing all of the harshness of nature penetrating or having to be lived amongst by his spirit. But let's have a look. Aha, and in architecture, so ribbed of a vault or other structure is strengthened with ribs. So the nave and choir have the usual Gothic ribbed vault. So, like in churches, you have those kind of like arches and that kind of shape, or like under a boat, that kind of shape. Am I making myself clear with my lovely physical descriptions of this? I'm picturing this kind of overarching doom, ice, coldness, and the contradiction of what he's picturing here. I think he's just really trying to paint an image of what hell looks like to her. So in thrilling, or to reside in thrilling regions, thrilling, I don't think it is like exciting. I think it is nervous, tremor, nerve-wracking, in scary region, like location, of thick-ribbed ice. In thrilling region of thick-ribbed ice. Thick-ribbed ice. And again, ice is a one-syllable word, but it's got a lovely hiss to it as well. So I think he's picking the clipped words well. To be imprisoned. And there's a semicolon there. So he's going on. He keeps adding to the imagery and to the scene he's creating. To be imprisoned in the viewless winds. Viewless winds. Let's have a little look up there, giving there a viewless wind. Let's look up winds as well, actually. I think that he's intentionally ruining nature here because nature is so overpowering, isn't it? And it is something that back in those days, and indeed today, people still do. It's something that we would associate with a higher power, and something that would be overpowering and scary and tricky for us to navigate as human beings, right? Stormy seas, hurricanes, volcanoes, all of this stuff is stuff we know lots about now, but it's also something that can feel very, I don't want to say visceral, but it can symbolically resemble, like in Julius Caesar, they use a lot of imagery with lightning and storms and all of this sort of stuff, don't they? It can help paint the picture of how we're feeling. I feel like I lost my train of thought there, but I feel like you kind of feel what I'm saying. Think of a Bronx tale. if the girl opens the car door, look up on YouTube if you don't get the reference. I don't get the reference, but I'll look that up after this. Am I McDonald's and I finish work? Brilliant. And yes, ribbed would be stronger. Makes sense now. Yeah. That's what it's making me picture, but it is an unusual sentence for us to grasp. So yeah, I think if you're working on this script or this piece, definitely tuck into that, and have a really clear image. I do think it is the fire from the river and then the sky of ice. I think that's really chilling and scary, overpowering again. Viewless winds. Yes, here we go. I saw as the ether that surrounds us, nameless, homeless spirits. Oof, lovely. Was not a good image in my mind's eye. Yeah, brilliant. So to be imprisoned in the viewless winds and blown with restless violence round about the pendant world. Again, and I can't remember, is it a sonnet actually? Or there's another speech where Shakespeare talks about, I don't know if it is Shakespeare actually, being blown, and the fact that this, it's also making me think of Toy Soldiers or Small Soldiers, the film, where the animatronic puppet toy can't feel, but he's like, what's that in the trees? It's wind. And he's like, what is wind? He's like, can't you feel it? And he's like, no, I can't feel it, I'm a toy. But it's that kind of, it can be really spooky and you can't see it. It's untangible. You can't grab it or grasp it, like water or fire, really. It is another element that we don't know anything about, but we know it's there, especially in this day and age. So yeah, really exactly what you're saying there. It's this, and again, this spirit thing, when cloths blow or curtains blow in the wind or something moves because of the wind, it can be really spooky. And I think he's really drawing on that spooky analogies, on the spooky analogies here. And I love that, to be imprisoned in the viewless winds. The viewless as well, I do think, is you can't see it, like I said already. To be imprisoned in something you can't see. Whoa. And blown with restless violence, not just violence, being blown, and be blown in restless violence round about, and again, not just round, it's round about, from one to the other, dum ba dum, bonked around all of the world, restlessly, never ending, this perpetual doom that is hell. He's really touching on here. So it's lovely, isn't it? Is this all making sense and coming to life for you more? Do you let me know? Yeah, it was not a good image. Pendant world, two beautiful two words that speak volumes. Wonderful. Sorry, I added beautiful in there for you. And yes, let's quickly look up pendant, actually. We're getting to pendant, because that's a word I'm not sure we all would maybe think of. I think of a pendant like a necklace, but it's pendant in this. So I kind of think, again, spirits and things. People use these pendants, don't they, this isn't one, but you dangle things around to find water or check if there's any spirits, or whether your baby's going to be a boy or girl or whatever. He's really drawing on imagery that, to Isabella, and now let's bring it back to Isabella's eye, is gonna scare the out of her, surely, because this is stuff that she fears, that she 100% believes is real. So he's doing a very good job of painting this image for her. So yes, pendant, hanging down or overhanging. Brilliant. Okay. Remaining undecided, pending. Lovely. And let's just look at the origin if we can see that. Oh, it's not giving me it. Interesting. It's sometimes confused with pendant, but it's a similar thing. So it's got suspended, dangling, pendulous, swinging. Okay. And remaining undecided. Good. So yeah, the pendant world, I kind of see that as the undecided world. Like, in our world, we do have free will. And so he's kind of stuck in that world of indecision, in this life that remains unsure, limbo, as it were. Awful. And I also do see the world, obviously, as a world in the solar system, obviously of this time. I'm pretty sure they didn't quite understand all of that yet and know the world was round. or that was a new kind of idea. That was something that was still very much speculated by lots of people. I imagine everyone had their own point of view on that. But I quite like that, this idea of the world just hanging and you being blown around it, confused, restlessly, violently thrown. Would you want to live like that for the rest of your days in hell? I don't think so. And that's why he's bringing it up to guilt trip Isabella. Also, notice there has been no full stop yet. I think he's getting urgent. There's a lot of semicolons there. He's thinking of one thing and then he's thinking of the next thing. The way I said it earlier was probably way wrong. I would recommend it is a little bit pastier and a little bit more full of the fear and the urgency of having hope suddenly plopped back in front of you, but she won't do it. There's got to be an element of that there, I think, as well. But for the sake of this exercise, I did want to really relish the language because I think it's very relishable, just like my McDonald's is, and I can't wait. So yes, and blown with restless violence round about the pendant world, or another thing, or to be worse than worst of those that lawless and in certain thought imagine howling. 'Tis too horrible. Or imagine, he's offering another thing, or imagine being worse than worst of those that lawless and in certain thought imagine howling. Can you even? It's such a good bit. Let me just quickly look up as well. Lawless. Let's just look that up. And again, lawless, we pretty much, I'd say most of us have an idea of what that is. If you're without law, you're without moral high ground, perhaps. But yeah, it says a lack of civic order. It's anarchic, ungovernable, unruly. And of course, these are all things that God doesn't want you to be. Or indeed government, or indeed in the play, the Duke doesn't want you to be. They're trying to restore order. And symbolically, this play could speak volumes for the state of the world. It's chaos, it's a mess. Free will has got so out of hand. We need to get some control back again. And that's something that is very relevant right now. Things in the state of the world are out of control. What are we going to do to rein that in again? And that's what is under exploration here. So lovely. And 'tis too horrible. Dash, 'tis too horrible. Imagine howling, 'tis too horrible. Yeah, or to be worse than worst of those that lawless and in certain thought imagine howling. To be worse than those kind of thoughts that are lawless and uncertain, corrupted perhaps. Imagine howling. I think he does cut himself off there because it is too horrible. He's shit in a brick, for want of a better phrase. And then we get the full stop. He stops. He can't go through with it anymore, perhaps. Acting choices to be made, but I can't talk about it anymore. It is too horrible. I'm really actually going to have to race on if I'm going to eat something because our next audition is at 10 too. So better hurry up. The weariest and most loathed worldly life that age, ache, penury, and imprisonment can lay on nature is a paradise to what we fear of death. The weariest, so most tired, I would say, and most loathed. I think he's specifically not using the same word of shame that she has done, but he's bringing it back. Living a life that is that bad, a worldly life, sorry, that age, ache, penury, and imprisonment can lay on nature is a paradise. Living in this world that me and you are in, Isabella, right now, with ache and age and penury and in prison is a paradise, in contrast to what you are about to throw me into by sentencing me to death. Even though it's not her problem, really. Well, it is, but it's not her doing it, to what we fear of death. And look at the pronouns there. It's not to what I fear of death. He's bringing her in to win the argument, to what we fear of death, sister. Very clever rhetoric, very clever use of language to get her on his team. Of course, she says, alas, alas. I imagine that's because all of this is so horrible to think about. And then he says, sweet sister. He's ingratiating her. Let me live. Not, I want to live. It's on her now. He's putting the blame and the onus of her actions and his situation on her. Let me live. What sin you do to save a brother's life, what bad thing you do, which is having sex out of wedlock, you know, becoming a not nun because you can't, you're having sex with someone, with a man. Nature dispenses with the deed so far that it becomes a virtue. Nature will not worry about it. They'll turn a blind eye and it will become a good thing because you've saved my life, essentially. Whew, let's leave it there. We're going to have to because my dinner's getting cold and I've got to go back to work in just a moment. But this was so much fun. I'm so glad we finally got this happening again. And hopefully I'll be a little bit more up on my feet like before. It's very tricky at the moment as I navigate my current living situation and where I am and work and everything else. But brilliant. She's not... I will have a look at that, Ernest. I will have a little look at that. But thank you guys so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure. I'm not going to read it again. I am going to have to wrap it up there because I need a wee as well. I've got about 7 minutes to do all of this stuff I need to do. But real joy to see you. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know any other thoughts if you are watching this back. And I will see you next week for Isabella. We're going to carry on with this scene and maybe even go back and look at the text before with the Duke's speech to him, because it's a delicious feast for the senses and the imagination for sure. Good to see you, Ernest. Good to see you, Rodney, and everyone else. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the flip side, whatever that means. Go!